Welcome back to the SBP Podcast Mobile Filmmaking. I'm your host, Susie Botello, and you're listening to episode 181.
We are Fade into Film.
Hey, so we're back on the podcast after a really awesome film festival. The International Mobile Film Festival took place in San Diego, April 26th through the 28th, and we met a lot of fantastic people, a lot of wonderful, bright humans who happen to love storytelling and shared their movies shot with smartphone cameras. So not going to talk about that right now. We're going to talk about that probably next week with the team. But for this episode, this is the version that we recorded during the film festival. But before we do that, I got to give a big shout out to Aaron Nabus for recording with his iPhone the entire session. And that's what you're about to listen to. It's a little echoey. It's in a room. It's not in our private studios at home. So there is a little difference in the sound. But what's more important is the content. It's the conversation and the discussion we had with everyone who attended the film festival this year. So if you're ready, let's go. Welcome to the SBP Podcast Mobile Filmmaking at the International Mobile Film Festival.
We're live.
Yeah, we're live.
Live.
So I'm your host, Susie Botello, and here with me today, a miracle has happened. We have our three Fade into Film panelists. We have Joey Min.
Hello.
We have Levi Austin Morris.
I like
Levi Austin Morris. Yes. And we have Ryan McDonald.
Hey everybody, how's it going?
He went a handsome man. I see him in person.
So today we have a great show planned out for you, which we just rehearsed about 3 minutes ago, right? We at least have some topics that we're going to talk about.
There we go.
Yeah.
There we go.
There we go. So we're going to be discussing crowdfunding. We're going to be talking about always learning. Yeah. And we're going to be talking about always practicing and executing.
Yes.
And we're going to talk about my dog. No, we're not.
Tico.
Tico. T-I-K-O. So listen, I'm glad. I just have to say this. It's a real pleasure and an honor. I know everybody in the audience, because I just asked, is listening to our podcast. So it's really nice to be able to see you when I speak with you here, but also when we keep recording episodes of the SBP Podcast Mobile Filmmaking online, we will know you. We will see your faces as we're speaking. Got it, guys?
I'll be speaking to each and every one of you next time we record.
That's right.
Yes.
So without further ado, I just want to start off really quick by thanking Joey for his wonderful action filmmaking smartphone.
Thank you. Thank you.
And Levi Austin Morris has been, I said it right,
Yes.
He is one of our judges for the film festival. And I thank you for coming down to do this crazy recording that we're going to do.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Nice.
And also for watching 2 feature films.
Yeah. And they were fantastic.
Yeah. And Ryan McDonald is actually has a film in the film festival. And he brought his 2 little girls that are also filmmakers. They are 11 and 8.
11 and 8, yeah.
11 and 8 years old, and they're also here. Alyssa and Sophie. Well, let's get down to business, guys. Ching, 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 ching. I don't know.
Yes!
Sorry.
Move on for a moment.
So Joey, I know you've been in San Diego before.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Yes.
What did you think about the sunshine that we had? The sun came out for us.
I mean, it's a lot chillier than I expected.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, okay, it's San Diego, it's probably, palm trees and it's hot and it's a beach or some shit. And I come here and it's like, wow, it's fucking freezing. It's Jersey weather.
Yeah.
It's Jersey weather.
You're right next to the ocean. Well,
Yeah.
It might be. It actually, I think that right now it's chillier here than in Jersey.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It
See,
is.
I know things.
And now you know
Which is-
when we complain about the cold.
Yeah, I guess
we're
you-
serious.
Yeah, I mean, you were talking about like, yeah, that.
Yeah.
You guys are crazy.
The ocean water's cold too. I went out there.
Yeah.
It's cold.
But it's cold and the sun is out, and that's real weird for me. Yeah,
The
there's no
Pacific.
heat.
It's the Pacific. It's always cold in the
Yeah.
Pacific,
When you're by the
especially if
water.
you're used to the other
But I'm
side.
right next to the Atlantic,
It's true.
so
It
it's
is what it is.
Yes.
It is what it is. Ryan and Levi have met before in our film festival a few years ago, but we've never met Joey in person, and we are not at all disappointed. We're very pleased. We're happy.
I act exactly the same.
Yeah.
We were every other week.
Yeah.
This is exactly me.
I'd like to start off with something that I think our audience here and our listeners are going to appreciate. We're going to talk about crowdfunding.
Sure.
And the expert on crowdfunding, at this table at least, would be Levi. And so, Levi, would you explain a little bit about crowdfunding? And first of all, talk about why I'm even insisting that you discuss this topic, because something you did last year for your feature film Paralysis was really awesome, and you learned a lot from that process, right?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, yes. I guess you said specifically, like, I know why I was going to talk about it, but what did you
Yeah.
want? Like, what were you?
Well, because
implying?
the reason, my implication
Yes.
was that because you did such a great job with your crowdfunding
Sure.
campaign for Paralysis, which is a mobile feature film, I thought that this would be ideal as opposed to getting, some person from Netflix who made a Marvel movie
Sure.
that talks about crowdfunding, because that's not even going to
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I mean, crowdfunding is it's a bitch. I'm going to be honest. It is a very difficult thing to do. But for us, we did a feature and we knew that we weren't going to have the funds to do it because making a feature is expensive. Like, I've done many short films prior to that, and I just paid for it out of my own pocket. And I knew going into Paralysis that we needed more equipment. We needed, more people. We were feeding our people, and it wasn't just pizza, So like
Nice.
we needed an actual budget.
Yes.
And so we did all the pre-production to figure out roughly what we could shoot the film on. And we realized it would be, I also, there's a number of different crowdfunding websites or sites like Indiegogo, Kickstarter, Seed and Spark, which is the one that we used, and GoFundMe. Like, there's a bunch of different crowdfunding websites. And I chose Seed and Spark. They also have a lot of really fantastic tutorials online. So if anybody is considering crowdfunding, I do recommend going on YouTube and looking up Seed and Spark's tutorials on how to make an effective and successful crowdfunding campaign. And so I deep dove into research so that I could figure out how to create the most effective one. Because I think a lot of times when you are doing crowdfunding, you get those pitch videos that are just, I'm the director of this film, this is what I'm doing, and it's just kind of talking at you.
It becomes kind of generic.
And monotonous, and you want to excite the people to give you their money. So, yeah. And I think another thing that a lot of people do wrong crowdfunding, and they talk about it a little bit in the Seed and Spark tutorials, is you're just like, nobody really knows what your project is. So like, if you're just making a project and slapping the name of your film on it, that is not as exciting as something that is like, more engaging or fun or unique or personal for that
Is it
people
more
who
like
are.
a little bit like bringing the humanity side of it?
Yeah, so one of the things that we did that was incredibly successful for our campaign, because our film Paralysis is about a woman who is suffering from sleep paralysis, and there's a sleep paralysis demon that visits her in the night. And so we went to the 99-cent store and bought these little plush dolls, and then we took Sharpies and permanent markers and made them creepy little hag. So the old hag was our demon, and so we made little creepy hag dolls out of them. And to make it more personal, anybody who contributed a certain amount, we would write just a very short little story of how that doll came to haunt that person. And we ended up, like, I think in our campaign, we like 13 to 15 of them we ended up having to make and sell off to, and it cost me $1 to make those, you know? So it was like super cheap way to get people interested. It's like a fun thing for them. But yeah, I mean, I think like making your perks, if you're gonna do the perks more personal and not even tangible things. Like there are fun things that you can do to engage your audience, because if you do, like, it costs money to sell these things or to send these things.
So let's build a little bit of a map.
Okay.
Right? So you would start out, you have your project that you want to get funded, right? And then once you have that in mind and you've solidified that in some way, right? Because that helps you set goals, right? So when you did that, you go about, you begin, and you don't just begin with marketing dolls and things like that, but
we had production meetings where we came together and we discussed things that would not cost us money, that were creative ways to engage people. And one of the things that we ended up doing was we did a hashtag challenge to come up with sort of the slogan for our film. And so a number of people sent in their hashtag, and we did end up sending off like a $15 gift card to Subway to the winner. So it's not a lot of money, but a lot of people are really excited to engage in that way. So they know the synopsis of the film, and that's it. And so they're trying to come up with a hashtag. And our
when you get into the account, right, into the profile, the link that they open when they click
we created a
on
Google Drive where they could go and they could submit their thing. And it was just a very easy thing. And the winning hashtag for us was Sweet Screams, which has become the hashtag for our film. It became the slogan for our film. And it appears in all of our marketing. And so it's just
you have to write some kind of a copy or something like that that's enticing to even get people to look further, because there's so many of these things out there, right, on the...
Well, what do you mean?
So, okay, so let's say I'm an idiot. Don't laugh. Okay, laugh. But let's say I'm an idiot, and I'm hearing for the first time that there's this thing called crowdfunding, right? So I go there and I look at this website and I'm overwhelmed. I'm overwhelmed with information and tutorials and things like that. And I'm just trying to get funding for my little film or my big film or my whatever project, right? So first thing, what is your project called? Well, yeah, it's this, but maybe that doesn't have to be the title, the heading, the enticing heading title for this campaign, because it is kind of a campaign, right? Crowdfunding.
Absolutely.
And then you have to add a description, and you have to somehow identify yourself, right?
But wouldn't at that point mean that you haven't thought about your project?
Yeah, like,
because the crowdfunding should be the last thing.
Yes.
You should
Okay, that's a good point. Yeah.
Like
you need to know what your your project is. You need to know, like, you need to have your script ready. Like, everything was prepared. We were just at that point, and again, I researched which platform I wanted to use, and Seed and Spark is fantastic with their tutorials. So I do recommend, if you are going to crowdfund, watch those tutorials. They also have to approve you before you can even go live. They're not going to allow you to go live until they think you could be successful. And so there were a few things that we did have to change. And one of the things that we were a little upset about was that we had shot a concept trailer, and then we had our pitch video, and we kept our pitch video engaging. We kept it funny, we kept it succinct, and we had little fun things in the video. But they wanted it shorter, so they were like, cut the pitch video, just do the talking heads, And I was like, I'm not cool with that. So I ended up cutting just a very short part of our pitch into it, and we released our concept trailer the day before we went live so that people could see what we could do prior to actually going live with the campaign. So we're like, look at what we can do. And then the next day we were like, by the way, we're looking for funding. And like, it didn't take very long. Like, we raised the money pretty quick. And we exceeded our money, which was great. And the thing is, we also, the thing that I recommend, that Seed and Spark also recommends, is splitting your campaign. Because it's a lot to be upfront to say, we need $30,000. But if you figure out exactly what you need for production first, and you have a production campaign first, and you say in your pitch, we will be having a post-production expense campaign later, but right now we're just raising the production campaign funds. It makes it less intimidating for people who are considering contributing. So we raised, the goal was $9,000 for the first campaign. We raised, I think, just under $11,000. And then the second campaign was, and we shot the film at $17,000. The second campaign, the goal was $5,500, and we raised almost $7,500. So we exceeded on both, which was great, because then that was less stressful for us. I will say something, and this is like off the cuff, because right now I am like, and I think I can share this, so I'm going to share this. We got a distribution deal, which is very exciting. However, there are costs with distribution, and that is something that I did not consider before. So in the future, if I do crowdfunding, I will be considering that in raising money, because it ends up being quite a bit more money. So keep that in mind if you are considering.
So you want to put your budget together.
Yeah. Like just be aware of where all the expenses are going to be, and plan ahead for that. Yeah.
Awesome.
But you wouldn't know all of that until you actually.
Exactly. It was like, and it's something that, like, for this one now, I'm like, okay, so in the future, I know, like, if I'm going to crowdfund again, which I don't want to, I'd like to find investors. So if you are interested in investing in an indie filmmaker, I'm very good.
But that's still pretty awesome, though, Levi, because you exceeded your expectations with it.
Yeah, and that with that exceeded financing, we were able to submit to more film festivals. And it worked well for us. You know, like, that's the route that we chose to do, was the festival route. And we were in, I think, 15 festivals, and we won 10 awards. So it was like, it felt good and validating as a filmmaker to have that. And now it's like, let's go on to the next one. You know, like,
So that's pretty good.
Yeah.
So, Joey.
Yes.
Let's talk about that. Well, actually, Ryan, let's talk about the always learning, the always learning the Ryan thing.
Oh, the Ryan thing. Thank you, by the way, for all the insight on the crowdfunding. This is certainly something I want to pick your brain about. So that's something I haven't tried yet. Is crowdfunding. So.
It is a full-time job. So
You have a lot of work that you could show people. I'm sure people will be like, yo, this guy, it'd be definitely easier for you.
No, I appreciate that. So what I want to chat about is kind of like always learning, and I want to preface this by saying that I probably come off as pretty pretentious sometimes around saying when I was younger, I really wanted to go to film school, and in Utah at the time that I was growing up, around the early 2000s, they didn't have film school in college, and so I knew already that I had to move out of state, and I did go to film school at a university, and I'm very proud of that. But I realize at the same time it sounds massively pretentious when I say it every time. So I want everybody to know that Judge Dredd with Sylvester Stallone is one of my favorite films still. And also, I'll throw in Batman and Robin by Joel Schumacher every once in a while, just as a kick. I'll get drunk at a party and be like, you know, we should
I'm with it.
I'll get drunk at a party and be like, Speed 2 is what we're watching tonight, right now. So, all being said, art film or not, like, I still enjoy a good commercial blockbuster or failure kind of thing like that. But one of the things that for me is that very oftentimes I find myself still consuming learning material around the medium itself. And in your workshop earlier, you were mentioning Buster Keaton and Charlie Chaplin, it's like you were going back again to those guys, and there's a moment where it's like sometimes I'll be speaking with the I'm on set, somebody's directing, and it's kind of like they don't really have a pitch for like who is inspiring this next shot, what we're doing next. And I find sometimes they're not watching enough movies. Mm-hmm. They're really just not consuming enough material. They're not listening to enough interviews. And we live in an era where we have so many YouTube videos where the Matt Damons and Ben Afflecks are talking about how they made Good Will Hunting, why they did it, and why they wrote the monologues.
Well, a while back, remember HBO used to have those.
They had the Green Light Project,
and the making of projects as well.
Yeah, really
awesome.
I used to record those on VHS.
Me too. But we won't date
DVD featurettes and shit.
Yeah. Remember when DVD said production notes? That was
right.
digitally flipped through. And so I find myself consuming that type of material, and the value that I find in there is you find a lot of tricks that they're doing. And if you're simply just moving forward and you're not watching enough of the old films or the new films, or really just digesting every trick that they're telling you, you're going to miss some of the bigger pieces. Here's an example. Tenet, which I still love. I don't care if you.
I love it.
I don't care if you get your dialogue. I know when I go into a Chris Nolan flick, it's going to be a little bit muffled, but but a lot of the magic in it is just basically reversing the footage, like the picking up of things is that goes all the way back to when Malaise was doing it.
Yes, exactly.
It's just simply reversing the footage, and it's such a trick that people are overlooking sometimes. And so when we talk about like practical effects compared to like CGI effects, it's like, but if we just look at how they did it practically, and it doesn't have to be the thing like by John Carpenter kind of practical effect, but it's simply just the way that one shot connects to the next shot.
I mean, and we've talked. Sorry, I interrupt, but like we talked a little bit in the podcast before, and you mentioned that like there's a trend on TikTok of like how to do a transition.
Yeah, how to transition.
This is literally something that you can see in an old movie. Yeah, exactly.
Well, because it's within the context of today, we got to keep remembering that there's different generations, and where they're absorbing that to learn from is a different medium.
And so like I'm not on TikTok, so I'm not as irritated about TikTok, but the way I see it is that you have a generation of people who, whether they know it or not, are editing, and they're doing basic edits where they're doing this like T-shirt thingy pull, and all of a sudden it pops into like they're wearing like a swimsuit or something like that, and that's a 100-year-old trick, and then. But then, as you were saying, around like action editing and things like that, like some people might do something completely different, and it looks CGI, and it looks fake, and it looks crap. It's like, dude, the mastery is already there. If we just look backwards into it. And so, I recently read the autobiography by George Malaise and and it was like the way that he found that trick of editing. So, nowadays we record something and we see it instantly. But when he records something, he can't even go process it himself. He has to ship it off to go be processed. So he's waiting like weeks, right? So he's like spinning the camera, was like recording downtown, and this is the time when that was very magical to record downtown because you didn't see photos of things around. Like you couldn't just Google it or whatever, right? Or take a picture of it and tell you what plant it is. So he's doing this, and then it jammed on him, and he was like, oh crap! And so he restarted it, and he went like this. Now. He ships it out.
For the listeners in audio.
Oh, sorry, I'm doing a little spinny hand thing here. Okay, all right, the magic trick is this. But he ships it out, and when he gets it back, he sees that like there's a jump cut moment, which had not been invented yet at the time. Sorry, there's some air quotes in there. But like there's a jump cut moment from the people who right before the camera jammed to the next spot. Now there's a bus, and everybody magically changed. And that's when he was like, wait a second. That's a trick. There's a trick there in the edit, and this is before like the Russians figured out like, montage and things like that. And so it's like, but I'm reading it though, so like a person who's graduated film school who's made X amount of short films and feature film, and I'm still blown away that was like how he figured that out. And there are times when we're on set and we're talking about something like every once in a while it's nice to be like, hey, this is the Citizen Kane shot. And just somebody on set knows what you're talking about for a second, kind of thing. But there are other times where someone wants to make a horror film, and if I ask them what are your influences, if I read the script and I can't find it, and I ask them and they don't know, I get weary about the project. When I'm reading it, I'm like, dude, this is De Palma right here, and this is Hitchcock right here. It's like I'm all on board, and that person says, oh yeah, well, because De Palma, as we know, he knows, he's understood the language of cinema. He's watched the Hitchcockian films. He's looked at it way back, and and I think that as any young person who wants to get into filmmaking, every person that you love who's doing it, if you just took a second, they love somebody else who did it.
That's right.
They're inspired by something else, and just go further deep down the rabbit hole of a thing. And that's my.
And that's how you're always learning.
That's my.
Right?
You know, the blade is on fire. I'm on a horse. I'm running towards the battle. Like that's my cry. That's my war cry.
Yeah, you go back in time.
Yeah.
You go back in time. You see the most distilled version of whatever it is that you're trying to do. So like, then you can kind of see through all of the variations that preceded it. You know, I get it. Exactly. I mean, that's
So
funny how
it's good to diversify the sources that you're using to learn from. And even if you're if you're passionate, you're naturally gravitating towards things like that. But you have to also, we're in a place at this time when media is coming at you from all different angles. But it's good to keep that in mind that, hey, I know what I want. I know what I'm looking for, and I'm looking to enhance and to better my filmmaking, and it's not going to happen overnight, and it's good for me to find these ways and look in different mediums. Look at the Google, I'm not sure about TikTok, but whatever. Go to YouTube, listen to podcasts, and read books.
Watch old movies.
Watch old
We watch old
movies.
movies, yeah. Well, and now, like, podcasting is the new blog in a sense, and so many filmmakers and actors now are on a podcast of some sort.
like right now.
Yeah. and so what I do through my mundane tasks, yeah, exactly, right now. When I'm mowing the lawn or I'm washing the dishes, something like that, like I'm listening to somebody speak about how they make movies. Like Mel Brooks did a podcast with TCM recently that I listened to, and so it's just kind of always like catching that. When William Friedkin passed away, I started just hitting the button on every interview piece that he was talking about. And he was talking about, he would shoot movies that are masterpieces like French Connection or The Exorcist, and he would tell people like, "Hey, you got one take on this one." I'm thinking to myself, Jesus Christ, dude, like that's a focus pull in half. But then I shot my short film, Ancient Evil Frankencock, and I told some people
I love that movie.
We had I do.
I love that movie.
But we had a couple moments where it's like I don't have time for so I'm letting them know. I was like, we're hitting start. We're gonna do you do it. I'll say reset. We'll do it again. We reset. We move on. And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, dude, you got 3 takes. You got 3 tries on this or 1. And we're out of here.
What?
I don't know. Mario.
It's fine.
That was covered.
Oh no, that's fine. Got it. All right.
But so again, I'm just the idea of pulling from the masters that were
exactly.
for you, and maybe it's just the landscape we come from. There's a lot of people from in the Utah area that they're trying to make something that is like they'll reference something that just happened last year. And like, that's the movie I want to make. It's like, don't make that one. Because maybe find out what they were thinking of when they made their movie, and you might go way back into like some avant-garde kind of a thing and deep dive down that rabbit hole, and then come back out the other side, homie.
Right,
Like,
exactly.
that's it.
I mean, if you don't have the skill set to
Yeah.
even do what they did last year, if you don't have the skill set for that, like which comes from like studying the old stuff, like how are you gonna do it, right?
Yeah.
Then you're just kind of copying at that point.
Yeah.
And plagiarism is not good.
No.
No. But Joey,
Yes.
that's a great segue into, not that, but it's a great segue into what you were talking about, which is always
Yes.
practicing and executing.
Because building on what Ryan said, it's like it's good to study, but I do know a lot of filmmakers that they do study a lot, right? But they make a film like once every 7 years, and their previous film and their recent film doesn't have a lot of difference in terms of skill set or whatever. And I think that's the thing. Like I think when I started YouTube, putting our films on YouTube, like being a filmmaker on YouTube doesn't really make a lot of sense, but what it taught me was it forced discipline on me. So like having the pressure of a deadline, even though there is no deadline, like it's an abstract feeling, right? Like I was forced to like, you know, write a script and like shoot it and complete it. And I started finishing it rather than perfecting it. And then along the way, you know, after like a decade or something, like, you know, I could see the growth. But so I kind of started developing this idea where it's quality through quantity.
Yes.
And, you know, so for everything, and it also kind of, as a filmmaker, all the scripts and all the stuff that I did that were not good, you know, I got it out there and people rejected it, people made fun of it, and that's good. And like, you know, after 10 years of that, like, I know what, like, it doesn't bother me when I do something wrong, right? And as opposed to somebody who just makes 2 films in like 10 years, and then, you know, one doesn't do well, and now they're like burnt out, oh, I don't want to make a movie again. Like, dude, come on, you know, you can do it. Like, I get it. So, and that's why, you know, with like the mobile, you know, phones and stuff like that, filming like that shouldn't take too long, because at least you get to learn.
You get to do more in a smaller.
It's still distilled. Like you learn the basics of filmmaking. Like I said, it's always besides the story, it's the technical aspect. It's the shot composition, shot progression, right? Then anything after that, like, you know, you could go into, but, you know, like the editing or like lighting or sound or whatever, like you could learn that after. But like learning just how to just frame something well is a skill in itself that I know directors.
I remember in one of our first, I think it was the first episode, you were saying something about that, where you were talking about you geek out right on the tech so many times that then all of a sudden that becomes your second layer. Subconsciously you know it, and now you can really get to the creative part of filmmaking. Right? Because
like once you, because like there are certain skill sets and certain techniques that is only unlocked after a certain gear is acquired. But like the camera itself, like it's already better than all the digital cameras from like 2000, right? Like I said, I love my DVX. Like I have it on an altar, basically just to remind me of my stuff. But like even then, like that thing can't do what like an iPhone 14 can do, right? Like it doesn't autofocus. It doesn't like it doesn't change or magically change your f-stop for you. Like what the heck, you know? Like, but with that though, like, you know, with the phone, if you know how to look at something, hopefully as a filmmaker, and you want to keep getting better at your craft, you probably have the itch to be like, how can I make this shot better? Or how can I make the story better? Or how can I make the sound better? Then hopefully, then you kind of like specialize, and that's the type of director that you become, right? Because like
you really develop your voice. As a filmmaker, as a director.
Exactly. Like the shots.
And that's the thing to focus on. Is the story and how you want to tell it.
Right.
And not to be confused with what I was saying. Sorry, like you absolutely should continue to make movies. You should not just sit there in a dark room and just read.
No, but I think both of those.
You should be doing both, because I do both, and I watch in my own films. I'm like, that sucks, and then I do something else. So absolutely, like I feel the same way. What you're saying is like just quality, it's quantity.
I think the incentive is by doing.
It's like a trial by fight, right? You know,
because it's like, only, I think it's a very like you have to be a prodigy to like look at a film and like somehow dissect, like, oh my god, that's a really cool thing, and somehow automatically know a way or a version to execute it. I don't know that.
Well, even through your own stuff. I mean, how many you're saying as far as you have like terms for each of the types of shots, but you acquired that over time.
Yeah, exactly.
Like you figured it out. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Like it's you know, simply because, like I said, we didn't go to film school, and you know, my crew, like with Steph, starting with Steph, they were more you know, like actors, like talent, right? But I need extra people, like, hey, I need people to help run the camera or whatnot, and then, you know, they don't know anything, so I'm trying to make it as simple as possible. So it's like, oh yeah, this is a Street Fighter shot, but next thing you know, the first time, but you know, like the Street Fighter shot before, it's like, oh, there's a lot of empty space and all that, but then, you know, throughout projects of doing the same thing, like Steph kind of understood it, and now she's my VP, like, and now she's manning, like, you know, 30-man like teams, right? That's crazy to think. I remember the first time we filmed with her, I had this other filmmaker with us, and he was like looking at her shot. He's kind of weird. He was like looking at her shot, and he like slapped her hand. Like when she was like,
Oh.
yeah, like kind of. I was like, what the heck? Like it's funny. And now she's like way farther. He is, right?
Slap his hand.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I think, we're running out of time, sorry.
Sure.
But when you piece this together is, you get your project in mind that you want to create. You want to make this film, right? You get started on it, and once you're starting on it, you're executing your project.
Yeah, learn the craft.
But wait a minute.
Yeah.
But once you're executing that, your creative mind starts saying, I want to do something like this or like that. And how do I do this to make it work right? And that's when you start digging in, and next thing you know, it opens up the Pandora's box almost of all these options and possibilities. And literally, especially with the phone, you can start practicing how I make that shot before you actually take the phone again to make that happen. And then once you've got that, you go crowdfund it.
Yeah.
Right?
Sure.
Make sure it happens.
I mean, I would say,
Right?
like, for myself, I did about 10 years doing sketch comedy for
Yes.
online, and that was really my film school, because I didn't go to film school either. I was a theater major. And so it really, I learned new techniques, and then, like, consuming as much media as possible. Like, you learn, but you don't go from,
Well, you have
I'm
to make
inspired and
fear.
I'm going to crowdfund and make a feature.
But I think that's a spark. It's a spark.
Yeah.
Your
But the funny thing is,
platform.
I'm sure you guys know a lot of people that don't do film, don't study film, and somehow like, I'm gonna make a movie because they just have the means to, and they do that, and they have
Yes,
the
of
first
course.
film syndrome, and it's like, oh, here's my first feature film. It looks subpar, but they're really proud of it, and you can't help but like, dude, you know what? Yeah, feel that fire.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Yeah, for sure.
I wouldn't tell anybody, no, don't do it.
Yeah.
But I will be weary of being on that project.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
no, I am.
Yeah.
First
No,
time
you're right.
director, and if they're sitting there and they're hitting all the words that I would hit, as far as like the films that they're watching and whatnot, I'm like, all right, I'm down for that.
Yeah, exactly.
So you can go hiking barefoot, but
But yeah, I'm
So,
sorry.
I'm sorry, we're out of time.
Okay.
So I just wanted to give you guys, I hope this was fun. I hope it was fun for you guys.
It's
Always.
fun to
Yeah.
actually be together.
Yes.
This is actually a lot of fun.
So thank you, Joey, Levi, Ryan.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
I
you,
upload
Susie.
Ryan for audio listeners because he happened to be right here. And we've got our filmmakers coming in the door, ready for that red carpet show we're gonna do. And we'll see you next week.
Next week,
Next week on the podcast.
When it's released.
whenever it leaves.
Yeah.
We'll see you next week on the podcast when it's released, or next week when someone's listening and we're recording again.
Yeah, that's fine.
So, thank you guys. Now say goodbye to our listeners.
Bye, guys.
It's always fun.
Bye.
Hey, thank you for listening. This was the entire recording from the show, the episode that we recorded live in person during the International Mobile Film Festival. But I can't say thank you enough to the guys for coming out and their willingness to participate and experiment, because this was our first time doing this, of course. It may not be the last, but it was definitely at least the first time. I also want to thank all the filmmakers who submitted films, all the filmmakers whose films were selected, and all the filmmakers who were able to come in person to the International Mobile Film Festival. I'm including some links in the notes. Please go and check them out. One of them is a link to the awards, so you can see who won at the film festival. Another one is for the sponsors of the film festival. And the other ones are what you see regularly. But also, I wanted to invite you to subscribe to the newsletter so you can receive updates directly in your email, as opposed to go looking around on social media. Thank you very much for everything, everyone. And Aaron, big shout out to you. Thanks for recording this so that we could share it with our listeners wherever you may be.